Mr. Stink! Chapter 17, Collapsed Bouffant. And that's why I feel that there should be curfew on all people under 30. Mother was in full flow now. She smiled as she received a smattering of applause from this comment from the people all over 30 in the audience. They should all be in bed by 8 o'clock at the latest. Sorry I was a little while, said Mr. Stink as he ambled back onto set. I thought it was going to be a number 1, but while I was standing there, I suddenly got the urge to have a number 2. The audience erupted into laughter. Some even applauded in delight as the serious show descended into a discussion of an old tramp's toilet habits. I mean, I usually do my number 2s in the mornings between 9:07 and 9:08, but I had an egg sandwich backstage before I came on the show. I don't know if you made the sandwiches, said Eric. No, I don't make the sandwiches, Mr. Stink. Now please, can we get back to the question of curfews for young... Well, it was a delicious sandwich, don't get me wrong, said Mr. Stink. But egg can sometimes make me want to go. And I don't always get much of a warning, especially at my age. Do you ever have that problem, Dr. Sir? Or do you have the bum of a much younger man? Another massive wave of laughter crashed on the stage. In the stale crisp room, even Annabelle was laughing now. We are here to discuss a very serious topics of the day, Mr. Stink, continued Sir David. His face was redder with red anger. It was a serious political programme, a programme he had presented for 40 tedious, boring years, was rapidly turning into a comedy show starring an old tramp. The audience was enjoying it immensely and booed Sir David a little bit as he tried to steer the show back to politics. He shot them a steely glare before turning to the new star of the show. And my name is Sir David, not Sir Derek, not Sir Doris, Sir David. Now, let's move on to the question of homelessness, Mr. Stink. I have a statistic here which says that there are over 100,000 homeless people in the UK today. Why do you think so many people are living on the streets? Mr. Stink cleared his throat a little. Well, if I may be so bold, I would venture that part of the problem stems from the fact that we are seen as statistics rather than people. The audience applauded, and Sir David leaned forward with interest. Perhaps Mr. Stink wasn't the clown he'd taken him for. Well, we all have different reasons for being homeless, said Mr. Stink. Each homeless person has a different story to tell. Perhaps if people in the audience tonight or out there watching at home stopped to talk to the homeless people in the town, they'd realise that. The audience were applauding, even louder now. But Mrs. Crumb leapt in. That's what I did, she exclaimed. I just stopped to talk to this tramp one day and then asked him to come and live with my family. I've always put others before myself. I suppose that's always been my downfall, she said, tilting her head to the side and smiling at the audience as if she were an angel. Well, that's not really true, is it, Mrs. Stink? Mrs. Crumb, said Mr. Stink. There was silence. Mother stared at Mr. Stink in horror. The audience shifted excitedly in their seats. Dad, Annabelle and Chloe all leaned forward closer to the TV. Even Sir David's moustache twitched in anticipation. I don't know what you mean, my very close friend, squirmed Mrs. Crumb. Oh, I think you do, said Mr. Stink. The fact is, it wasn't you that invited me in, was it? Sir David's eyes gleamed. Then, who did invite you to stay with the Crumb family, Mr. Stink? He inquired. Mrs. Crumb's daughter, Chloe. She's only 12, but she's an absolutely fantastic girl. One of the sweetest, kindest people I've ever met. These words fell on Chloe like an enormous yes. Then everyone in the stale crisp room looked towards her and she was overcome by embarrassment. She hid her face in her hands. Dad stroked her back proudly. Annabelle pretended not to be interested and helped herself to some more stale crisps. She should really come out here and take a bow, said Mr. Stink. No, snapped Mother. No, Mrs. Crumb. I think we'd all like to meet this extraordinary young girl. The audience applauded his suggestion, but Chloe felt glued to the seat. She couldn't even speak out loud in front of class. She didn't want to be on TV in front of millions of people. What would she say? What would she do? She didn't know any tricks. This was going to be the most embarrassing moment of her life. Even worse than when she threw up macaroni cheese on Miss Spratt. But the applause was getting louder and louder, and eventually Dad took her hand and gently pulled her to her feet. You're feeling shy, aren't you? Said Dad. Well, you shouldn't. You're a fantastic girl. You should be proud of what you've done. Now come on, enjoy your moment in the limelight. Hand in hand, they raced down the corridor towards the set. Just out of sight of the cameras, Dad let her hand go and smiled supportively as she stepped into the light. The audience applauded wildly. Mr. Stink beamed over at her, and she tried to beam back. Mother was the only person not applauding, so Chloe's eyes were obviously drawn to her. This made Chloe even more uncomfortable. And she tried to do a curtsy, but didn't really know how to, and then ran off the stage, back into the safety of the stale crisp room. What a charming child, said Sir David. He turned to Mother. Now, I had to ask you, Mrs. Crumb, why did you lie? Was it purely to further your own political ambitions? The other guests from rival political parties looked at Mrs. Crumb and tutted, as if they'd ever dream of doing anything so immoral. Mother started to perspire. Her hair lacquer began to melt, and her makeup ran slowly down her face. Dad, Chloe and Annabelle sat and watched her squirm, unable to help. Well, as if anyone would want that horrible old tramp in the house anyway, she shouted. Look at him! You lot watching this at home, you can't smell him. Oh, but take it from me, he absolutely reeks. He stinks of dirt and sweat and poo and pond and dog. I wish that great stinky stinker would just stink off out of my head forever. There was shocked silence. Then the boos started. Boo. And then they got louder. Boo. Mother looked at the audience in panic. At that moment, her bouffant completely collapsed. See you later.